How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Hands Down DFS video. Ryan here. We've got a little Thanksgiving Day special for you, covering the Week 12 DraftKings Thanksgiving Day slate, the three-game slate on Thursday. I'm going to be running through this slate, kind of giving you my thoughts on each game, thoughts on the slate as a whole, and then, giving my favorite plays at each position. And I think these small slates are really interesting. I think they really level out the playing field. There's an increased emphasis on ownership and trying to find leverage because there is only three games, only six starting QBs, six starting running backs. It really makes you hone in trying to find those plays to differentiate yourself. And ultimately in GPPs, your goal is to kind of just find that one guy who's going to be low owned and score a touchdown. That's what it boils down to. But just to talk about this slate a bit, three games, we'll go through them each quickly. We've got the Bears at Lions is the early game, the 12:30 Eastern game. Bears are favored by 3 points. Over-under is currently at 41.5. Andy Dalton's going to be replacing Justin Fields as the starter, as Fields is dealing with a rib injury right now that brought him out of last week's game. And then Goff is also a game-time decision. We'll work on the assumption that he's currently going to play, but it is something to monitor. If he goes out, things will certainly change. Tim Boyle at 4,800 comes into play. Over to Las Vegas and Dallas, the 4:30 game. The Cowboys are favored by 7.5, which kind of seems a little high with how they played last week. But over/under is at 50.5 points. I think you're going to see a lot of game stacks on this game, and this is going to be the most popular game by far, given that it is the highest over/under. And I'll go there in cash. It is a game stack that I think you'll want to play in cash games, but in GPPs, I would be wary about having too much exposure to this game because I think with all three of these games, I don't expect any of them to be outrageously high scoring. I think 50.5 is kind of high, honestly, for this Vegas versus Dallas game. I kind of like the under there, so I don't love this game as max exposure in my GPPs. And then concluding with the Bills and Saints, Buffalo 5.5 point favorite, over under set at 45.5. This game, I wouldn't fear the Saints offense, as in I wouldn't mind playing them. I think a lot of people are going to be off them. Obviously, they're banged up. Don't have any, assuming Kamara doesn't play, they don't really have any big names kind of in their lineup, but they've averaged 28 points per game over the last 4 weeks, 2 of those weeks without Kamara. Kamara did not practice Tuesday, which is when we're recording this, Tuesday evening. Might miss another week. So keep that in mind. But honestly, the Bills' defense has just been mediocre at best the last couple weeks. Again, New Orleans' offense is kind of a spot that I like for GPPs. But then there's also the question, what do we do with the three-headed, not monster, but the three-headed Bills backfield? Just so much confusion there last week. Singletary was getting a majority of the snaps, followed by Breida and Moss. But then the week before, it was Moss getting a large majority, followed by Singletary and Reggie Gilliman. And Breida just got 14% of the snaps. So I feel like one of these guys is going to be in the GPP winning lineup, and it's just confusing on what to do. So we'll take a look at that. So let's just dig into these plays. Starting at quarterback, I think the most popular play on the slate and probably my cash game play is going to be Dak Prescott here at 6,900. I think we've got a good price on him. He did struggle last week against the Chiefs defense that we kind of thought he would be, have a high scoring game against. But I mean, we've talked about how the Chiefs defense isn't that good and how their, passing defense has just been picked apart this season, but they've quietly gotten a lot better over the last 3 games. They're allowing just barely over 200 passing yards a game. So I think that Chiefs secondary might kind of they're finding their rhythm now. Obviously, I still think Dak should have been capable of scoring more than 5.64 points, but definitely has that ceiling of, about 30 points, and I think he has a relatively safe floor against Las Vegas, probably sitting right around the 20-point mark. So I like him in cash, but again, for the GPPs, I am kind of scared of Dallas. I think there is a possibility people get over leveraged in that game on guys like Dak and CeeDee Lamb, and they might only score a couple touchdowns and come back to hurt you. So because of that, the two guys I do like for GPP are Derek Carr and Trevor Siemian. I think a lot of people are going to be scared of this first opponent rank against for Buffalo, but Buffalo hasn't played the strongest QB schedule, and he's held his own. I mean, you see 26 points last week against Philly. If Kamara is back, I certainly like Siemian a lot more. I think that gives him a lot of a big safety net out of the backfield. They definitely use Mark Ingram just as much as Alvin Kamara, and we kind of talked about that in our Week 11 breakdown. But again, Kamara is just a much better player. If he is active, Simeon will have him to rely on, and those checkdowns are going to get chunk yardage and just should give Simeon a relatively safe floor. And then Derek Carr, we talked about this just being a high-scoring game, a game that Dallas is favored by 7.5 points on, and I think we'll see Derek Carr kind of throwing the ball around the 35 to 40 attempt mark. Hopefully, maybe even get higher than that. So I'm going here purely based on volume. I think Derek Carr has a real possibility of exceeding 40 passing attempts and that 300-yard mark that will get you that bonus. So those are kind of the two GPP plays that I like for the QB position. Over to running backs. After what Jonathan Taylor just did against Buffalo last week with that 5-touchdown performance, if Kamara does play, definitely have to consider him. Again, non-participant in Tuesday's practice. I don't know if he does end up playing, but if he does, we certainly need to put him into our player pool. If he doesn't, then Mark Ingram's essentially a lock. He's, like I just said, he's being utilized just as much as Kamara is. You see 8 targets, 7 targets, 16 rushes, 14 rushes. He's getting 20 attempts per game at 6,200 against a team that just allowed Jonathan Taylor to score like 50 fantasy points. So I think those two guys you definitely consider. And then I think Swift and David Montgomery from the Chicago-Detroit game, they both will kind of be chalky for their own reasons. Swift is just a workhorse running back used on the ground, in the air. Just a guy that always has the ball in his hands and honestly has been kind of a bright side for a Detroit team that hasn't won a game yet. So I think he'll definitely be high on, and I think Montgomery as well. Running backs, when they play Detroit, they just always find a way to find the end zone. Even last week, we saw Nick Chubb. The Browns in general just struggled, but Nick Chubb still found the end zone in the passing game. So again, it's just a spot where David Montgomery for 6,000, he's almost guaranteed to score a touchdown. Nothing's guaranteed in fantasy football, but running backs score touchdowns against him. I lean Swift just because I do think he has a higher ceiling and higher floor, being just the Detroit's best player, possibly seeing 10 targets. I don't know if we can expect that realistically. He's done it twice this season, but I think we're going to look around his average around the 5 mark. But, 5 targets, 15 rushes. You're talking 20 touches for a guy that's extremely talented at 7,300. So I like him a little bit more than Montgomery. I don't love the Las Vegas Raiders backfield. We got Josh Jacobs here at 5,900 and Kenyan Drake at 4,600. I'm probably staying away from both of these. However, I might keep Drake in my player pool. I think he's a guy where we talked about Derek Carr's probably throwing the ball a lot. Kenyan Drake is used out of the backfield pretty significantly. At least gets a couple targets every game. So if he does manage to sneak into the end zone this game, I think he's going to be super low owned. Probably one of the lowest owned of the running backs, above that 4,000 range that you're considering playing. So I do kind of like Kenyan Drake, but he's more of my dart throw. But in general, don't love the Las Vegas backfield. I'd stay away. And then I think another way, talking about differentiating yourself to be different, is be over the field on Tony Pollard. Don't be scared to kind of go heavy on a backup running back for Dallas. If Vegas is right, and if this is a high-scoring game with over 50 points where Dallas should be winning by a touchdown, that means both Zeke and Pollard should get a lot of work. And we've seen, even obviously Zeke's a great player, but they have been used kind of interchangeably. Tony Pollard isn't, he's accustomed to getting about 10 carries a game. So I think you can play Pollard with some comfort. If Dallas gets up by 2 scores, maybe Pollard gets 10 carries in the second half of the game and can find the end zone in those touches. And at 5,600, he becomes great value. And again, because he is a backup running back, he won't carry the same ownership that Elliott, Kamara, Swift, your guys up here would. So I think that's kind of a way to be different. And then, big question, what do we do about the Buffalo running backs? And in short, I don't really know. For one thing, you're not going to have to worry about ownership on any of them, because New Orleans is a very tough rushing defense. They are first for a reason. They've been solid. And also, these guys just are used so interchangeably. I don't think one's going to carry way more ownership than the other. So I don't think we're worrying about ownership. Who do you feel is going to get the touchdown? And that's what it comes down to. I'm going with Zach Moss just purely because he has gotten the red zone touches this year. He does lead the Bills in red zone touches. I think if they do manage to find the red zone, it will be Moss in the game, and he is the cheapest one. I think he will be the highest owned for that reason, but I don't think he's going to be dramatically high owned. I mean, in a 3-game slate, he might be nearing 20, but I think when you talk about guys like Swift, Elliott, Kamara, if he plays, you'll be probably seeing that closer to 50%. So I don't mind playing Zach Moss in GPPs. Over to wide receiver, this is kind of where we need to start getting unique. Sure, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Mooney, they're all fine plays. I will say I'm going to stay away from Gallup because if Dallas is truly playing for the lead, we should probably also mention these injuries going on, how CeeDee Lamb is dealing with a concussion. He still has to be cleared from concussion protocol, and Amari Cooper, while asymptomatic, still needs to be taken off the COVID list. So just going based on the assumption that both of these guys are playing, Gallup becomes a third wide receiver on the team, and maybe even a fourth pass catcher because we'll talk about Dalton Schultz. But Dalton Schultz has played a big role in the Dallas offense. So for 5,900, that's way too pricey for a team. Dak might only throw the ball 30 times, maybe even less. Staying away from Gallup. But anyway, back to the point of this is, where do we find a different play? And I think a key spot to target is with Andy Dalton coming back, kind of an experienced pocket passer, a guy who's been in the league for several years. May not have had the most, doesn't have the most trophies, doesn't have the most rings in his NFL career, but he does know how to throw the ball. He's been in the NFL for, a while for a reason. So someone like Allen Robinson, who last year, this guy was a $7,000+ wide receiver. He's kind of fallen off the radar this year. With Andy Dalton coming back, do we see Robinson kind of get up to those double-digit targets that he was seeing last year? I mean, I think he was in top 10 in the league in targets last year. So I think with Dalton coming back, Allen Robinson could be a spot where you're getting a guy for 5,000, 5,100, who's just an extremely talented receiver, has fallen down to this price because Justin Fields, the rookie, has been in the pocket. And then also another spot I like are the non-Stephon Diggs wide receivers for Buffalo, particularly Cole Beasley. He's no stranger to getting 20+ point games. He's done it 3 times this season, and he did it a handful of times last season. He's obviously an experienced player in the league. He is kind of tied with Sanders as the second wide receiver on the team. I mean, we've seen Sanders kind of at the beginning of the season. It was kind of 50-50. Sanders may have surpassed him a little bit, hence being $300 more expensive. But I like Cole Beasley a little bit better this game as a piece of Buffalo without having to go expensive and go Diggs and Allen. I kind of like Beasley as a one-off plug for Buffalo if you're not going to stack that Buffalo side of the ball. And then let's move to the Las Vegas receivers, because this is another spot where, like I just mentioned, with Kenyan Drake and with Derek Carr, I think Carr throws the ball a lot this game, so who's catching the ball? Renfrow is going to be the obvious play. I think he's safe. I really like him for cash game plays. You can see how consistent he is. 13 fantasy points per game, and that's a true average. He is getting around 13 points almost every game. Receiving right under 10 targets almost every game. It looks like 7 to 8 is about his average. Again, should be seeing similar work against Dallas. I think you put him into your cash lineup safely, knowing that he'll probably get you around that 12 point mark. So I like Hunter Renfrow for cash games, but a guy I really like in my GPPs is going to be Zay Jones. I think he's very sneaky, and when we talk about a guy who, to win a GPP on these small slates, you need get a guy with a really low ownership who scores, and I think Zay Jones could be that guy. He's got big play potential, and he's also running a lot of routes. I mean, he's normally on the field for since the Raiders lost Henry Ruggs. He's been on the field for about 80% of snaps every game. So, if we see Derek Carr throw the ball 45 times, maybe they're playing down 2 scores in the fourth quarter and you need to come back. Derek Carr is going to need to take some shots, and Zay Jones is the big shot guy. See, he only has 1 catch in all these games, but you're talking 43, 20, 22, 20. You're talking these long 31 in week 1, these long balls, long plays to him. So Zay Jones could be a sneaky play at minimum price, kind of plug in and hope he scores. And, obviously, if he does, you're getting huge advantage on the field with him because he's not going to be very high owned at all. And lastly, just want to talk about another guy I like. I talked about these Chicago guys already, but didn't mention Marquise Goodwin. When Dalton came in for Fields, and Fields got injured last week 11, he seemed to really like Goodwin. You see he had his season high targets with 8 targets, caught 4 catches and that touchdown, had a really good game. I think we can continue to see that into this week for $3,800. Again, similar to Zay Jones, you might be able to throw Damiere Byrd in there also at minimum priced and kind of hope for a big play from him. But I think Goodwin's going to be another good GPP staple. To close this out, let's move over to tight ends. Top tight end for the week has to be Waller. I mean, it's just no secret. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. It's going to probably him or Renfrow. I would assume more Waller is going to lead the Raiders in targets, probably lead the Raiders in receptions, yards, you name it. He's just $6,400, the highest priced tight end for a reason. Yes, he might be 60% owned on this slate, but I think he's got the highest floor, highest ceiling, and I don't think this price is unreasonable for him, so I do like him. And then I don't like Schultz for the same reason that I don't like Gallup, just because if those other two, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, do play, Schultz becomes a third or fourth option for Dak in a game where they should be leading. So don't love Schultz. Hawkinson's a guy that receives a lot of targets, but again, I'm not sold on him against Chicago. He's had an up and down season, and I'm not just talking about this 1 week. Just he's started off really hot. Kind of leveled off here. You see 3 points, 8 points, 4 points, kind of started averaging out again. So I don't know. I not in love with Hawkinson this week. I like Dawson Knox a little bit more. I think he's just kind of becoming a staple in the Bills offense. Had a nice bounce back after, I don't know, we throw out this Jets performance. Obviously he got injured in week 6. Missed a few weeks, came back versus the Jets in a game they didn't really need him. So I think he had a nice bounce back spot against Indy in a game where Buffalo really couldn't even get in the end zone, couldn't get the ball moving much. So I think Dawson Knox could be okay, but more importantly, if you want to fit in guys like Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Alvin Kamara in your lineup, you need to find value in this tight end spot, and I think a good spot to do it is Nick Vannett at $2,500. He played a decent amount of snaps last week for the Saints. Troutman's injury, you see, was moved to IR. He was actually, when I was taking notes for this, he was doubtful. So I guess they just moved him to IR. I think you'll see a split time between Juwan Johnson and Nick Vannett. Johnson earlier in the season, when Jameis Winston was in, he had a few touchdowns, had 2 touchdown game in week 1, had another one in week 4. Was used pretty sparingly. I think Nick Vannett becomes a more reliable target for Trevor Siemian, and he's also minimum price, so I think he's really good. A really good play for GPPs. And then defense, you might want to consider playing defense versus one other position player. I know that's normally a no-no, but when you have such a small field, it could be wise if you want to go the Lions defense, or say rather Chicago is probably a better idea. Go Chicago, but also play DeAndre Swift. The Bears only hold Detroit to, say, 10 points, but the one guy that gets in the end zone is Swift. He could still easily have a 100-yard all-purpose game while the Chicago defense still puts up good numbers. So don't really have much to say about defense. Kind of plug in where you see fit. Don't be scared of playing a defense versus one position player. And last thing I want to mention is the salary. When you have these small slates, again, don't be scared to leave money on the table, especially in GPPs. Just throwing a lineup together. But if you want to go, say, Derek Carr, Zay Jones, I talked about possibly having a touchdown in him, and then a guy like DeAndre Swift you like, getting different with Tony Pollard. Say you want to pay up for one of these Dallas wide receivers, like Dawson Knox. Say for your defense you like, we just talked about Chicago, we'll still say Chicago, and like I mentioned, Swift, so then we'll go Allen Robinson, and then we have our flex left over, so we plug in Stephon Diggs. Sure, just throwing stuff together. But just the point is, if you want to leave $1,000-$1,500 on the table, I don't think that's unreasonable, because I think you can make a really good lineup. I mean, not that I'm submitting this by any means, but you see here it's Stacking Las Vegas. Actually, let's just go Darren Waller. And then down here, say we want to go Mooney, Renfrow, any of these guys. Just the point is you can make a good game stack where you're stacking Las Vegas against Dallas. Let's see here, that's a big part of it. And you're leaving $1,200 on the table. And even though this is going to be the highest owned game, this Las Vegas-Dallas game, you're going to be different because you are leaving money on the table. So I wouldn't be afraid to do that. Cash game, obviously, the play is a little bit different. You probably want to use up that salary. Guy like Dak, you probably want to end Swift. I think you can go Swift and Montgomery isn't a bad play. Talk about Renfrow being consistent in cash. Tight end, I don't mind for my cash game, honestly, going Vanett. Wherever he is down here, because even if he sucks, he's only 2,500. He's not eating too much of your salary. We can punt defense. Let's see. Again, kind of just throwing things together as we go, just to show you guys what I'm doing. I really like Beasley, so I'm going to throw Beasley in there. I feel like we need some of these Dallas guys, so I'll throw in Amari Cooper in there, and then probably finish it off with Elliott. I mean, even that's leaving $8,000 on the table. Here, we'll upgrade that to that. There we go. And, you can... So that's probably a more cash-looking lineup. But, yeah. Point is, don't be afraid to leave salary on the table in GPPs, because that's how you're going to be different. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe, and we'll have our normal Week 12 content coming out soon. Good luck on the Thanksgiving Day slate, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully, you can get away from your family and watch football, as I'm sure that's what I always plan on doing on Thanksgiving, so hopefully you get to too. But have a good holiday, and talk to you guys later.